You are now entering the horror sanctum.
Hello, and welcome back to the Horror Sanctum podcast. I'm Jay with John, Kellen, and TJ. And this week, the week of Friday the 13th, we are joined by actor, musician, and horror legend, the OG Jason Voorhees himself, Mr. Ari Lehman. Ari, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jay.
Thank
Sad
you. So,
spaceman himself.
Sad spaceman. So I have
very, very happy to meet all of you in Nashville. And, here it is, Friday the 13th, the date itself. What would Mama Voorhees say, Jay?
Oh, she would love her baby boy, that's for sure.
No doubt. She always did.
If you're joining us, Ari, if you aren't familiar with his other work, he's most known for being the first Jason Voorhees in Friday the 13th. If you need a visual, I have a visual as well. The Boy in the Lake.
Yes.
I've had the pleasure of booking your band, First Jason, 3 times now. We met in Chicago, I believe, at a horror flea market. I introduced myself, said, "Hey, come to Nashville." You said, "Absolutely." And the rest is history. So every time I've seen you guys in town, you crushed it.
I love that venue where we were playing that little supper club. What is it called?
Springwater.
Springwater.
Yeah.
Wow, that's an experience, because I remember every time we would get down there, we'd say, "Oh, nice little place," and then the people just packed it in there, and each band was more badass than the next. I remember looking at the guys and saying, "Now, come on, we got to get in there and blow the roof off this place," which I think, we did. Not that, because we're different. All the bands are different, and the whole night just kind of culminated to a volcanic peak, you might say.
Yeah, and you guys definitely blew the roof off. You always do. So I know the other guys are going to have some Friday the 13th questions, which I'm sure you get a lot. So I'm going to start off with some music and First Jason questions. So a lot of people probably don't know, but you're trained in classical music and jazz piano, and you actually got a scholarship to Berkeley. So I was just curious as to how you got into classical music and eventually picked up the guitar.
Well, yeah, what a transition. If you had told me when I was practicing 5 to 6 hours a day in New York City at New York University that I would eventually be playing horror heavy metal on a guitar, oh man, I would have said no way, because I was a jazz purist for many years. That was my real trip. What occurred was, after high school, I went to New York City, and by going to New York University, Jay, I got to enjoy the music of some of the great jazz musicians. Okay, I could literally go downstairs from my dormitory, where, by the way, Rick Rubin himself lived in my dormitory.
Oh, wow.
Weinstein dorm, where when they had a party there, they had Grandmaster Flash and Flava Flav was at our, prom, as it were. But, so yeah, I learned, I would go downstairs and just get a beer, and I could hear Hank Jones, Tommy Flanagan, McCoy Tyner, George Coleman, forget it, the list goes on, Barry Harris, Art Blakey, forget it, I took a master class with Art Blakey. It was just that atmosphere of jazz was amazing in New York at that time. But then, what happened was, all of a sudden you got that smooth jazz came in, Kenny G, that smooth jazz. Okay. And so I was into modern jazz, atonal, cool, John Coltrane, right? But people said to me, "Hey, Ari, you got that long hair, you got that look, you could just do Kenny G, just do the Kenny G thing." And I was like, "Nah, man, I didn't want to do that," and then the whole Wynton Marsalis thing came in, and it became very academic jazz. So what I did was I gravitated toward world music, which was very big in the 90s. World music was big. I, in fact, got to work for Interscope Records, Jay, and I was in a band from Nigeria, West Africa, this artist, Majek Fashek. And I toured with him for 10 years and went all over the country learning about African music. I even got to perform in Ivory Coast, West Africa, which was an amazing experience. And then, you know, again, if you had said to me, man, one day you'll be playing horror guitar, you'll be playing, I would have said, no, what? I would have looked at my colorful jumpsuit and said, no way, man. You know, I'm a reggae guy. You know, I got a standing ovation at Apollo Theater performing with that band, you know, doing a keyboard solo and just having so much fun jumping up and down to African reggae music. And, you know, what really happened is a connection with Friday the 13th, of course. Somebody sent me an email when email started happening. This is that far back. He said, did you autograph this photo of Jason Voorhees in the water? And I said, well, that's me, but I did not autograph that photo. And he said, well, gosh dang, I just paid $50 for this. Huh? So the whole thing began right there in the sense that I investigated what was going on. We got that autograph vendor actually to return some of the money to some of the fans. He claimed it was a third party, etc. You know, welcome to the autograph world. But it dawned on me, wow, there's a market here for whatever it is I'm doing. And you know, Jay, I'm sure you know, in the 90s, world music was big, but then it kind of slowed down. You know, we had big artists. We had artists from Africa, Brazil, Morocco, Japan. It was amazing. But, you know, it's still amazing, but not so much international music now. Although it's starting to pick up again, especially with the Sahel bands, the guitar bands from East Africa, and that are so amazing. We all love Madhu Mokhtar and Tinariwen. But, okay, so I started looking around for ideas, and I was at the Meadowlands for a convention, and it dawned on me, you know, horror fans love metal. Horror fans love punk. You might say every metal fan is a horror fan. Every punk is a horror fan, you know. So I started to explore in that direction. Now, when I was in New York, I had a buddy. He had a band you've heard of called Reagan Youth. It was none other than Dave Insurgent himself. Reagan Dave, or Dave Rubenstein, but he was, you know, so he would bring me to see punk shows. I got to see the Bad Brains, okay? I saw the Ramones. I saw Rob Zombie, White Zombie, and all of these bands way back at CBGB's. And it all of that music, I started to draw upon that experience. Then I moved to Chicago. In Chicago, I met the bass player from a band called Macabre, which is one of the best murder death metal bands out there, okay? They do a whole album about Jeffrey Dahmer and all this stuff. It's amazing. And Macabre, by the way, is the first band 20-something years ago to do, you know, the double bass drum the way metal bands do, to do every track on a record double bass drum. So yeah, wow. That's Dennis. Dennis from Macabre is absolutely amazing. So is Lance, but the singer, but the bass player, who's known as Nefarious, they were on a small hiatus, and he jumped into First Jason for a while. So that's the initial formation. When I was in Chicago, I recorded Jason is Watching. And so we have all the songs, Jason is Watching, Machete is My Friend, Sink or Swim, you know, the first Jason album. And that's, you know, that's really how it all started. But the connection with the fans, once the fans saw what was going on, and not only that, the fact that I'm playing on heavy metal guitar, and I'm one of the only people in the world, I'm the evil wizard of guitar, if you will. So yeah, check out, we have some new videos up. Look what you did. The words are from Mama Voorhees. Look what you did to him. You never paid any attention. Oh my Lord, what monster could have done this? But so it's the fans of Friday the 13th are what made the franchise what it is, more than any other franchise. If you look at our good friend Michael Myers, okay, same actor, same director, same production team, always. But Friday the 13th changed production teams every time. It was you, the fans, that gave it the continuity. And the continuity you asked for was Jason Voorhees.
Yes, absolutely. So that was my next question about music. Like, was there another band idea that you had before First Jason, or was First Jason your first go-to? You're like, I'm going to do this. Or did you have like some weird punk project you were thinking about?
That's a great question. Yeah. When I got to New York, I had all these, I was into doing like, I guess what you call white boy funk. And that's exactly what Hilly Crystal called it when I brought it to CBGB's and gave him a cassette. And he said to me, that's Hilly Crystal, who ran CBGB's. And he said, yeah, I'm going to give you a show. But he said, you know what you got to do, Ari? I'll give you a piece of advice. If you want to get anywhere in this business, you got to grab them by the balls. And I was kind of young. Oh, man, wow. But, I never forgot that. And I took that advice and I ran with it. And I think that clearly I'm a very presentational individual. So I love to bring the show and the showmanship. And, but yeah, now, what were you asking about? Another band? I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, if you had any other band ideas before you ran with the First Jason.
Oh, yeah. So my first band, that band was, I had many different names, but one that did get some traction and some acclaim was a straight up world music project. And you can find some of that music on Spotify. So since I'm from a Jewish background, okay, and I was embracing the whole idea of world music being part of expressing one's ethnicity, etc. So I went ahead and called it after my Hebrew name, basically. So it was called Ari Ben Moses Band. Ari Ben Moses Band played reggae, African music, Latin music. It was kind of like a Santana kind of thing, We did all kinds of sounds. I had a bass player who was the son of a famous Japanese trumpet player. The bassist named Kenji Hino, and Japanese guitarist, a drummer from West Africa from the band that I was in, a percussionist from the Dominican Republic. So it was really, again, I was trying to really embrace kind of an authenticity like I did with jazz, yet only to realize the same kind of thing. You got to stick with what Hilly Crystal said and grab them by the balls. And that's what we do with First Jason. A lot of other horror bands out there, and I'm not, it's just different methodology. They like to use costumes. They like to use masks. But First Jason uses music because music is more powerful than all of that. And we don't need any of that stuff. I was Jason. I am the actor who played the very first Jason. And that's enough horror for anybody.
So I am curious. I know we're all huge fans of Friday the 13th. And when you took on that role, at what point did you realize this is like the biggest horror franchise ever? Was there something that clicked when you were filming after? Like, when did that hit?
Decades past. No, years, decades passed, my friend. Decades passed before we had any idea. I mean, initially, you've got to realize Friday the 13th was not the initial project that Sean Cunningham had set out to create. In fact, I auditioned for a comedy about a ragtag bunch of orphans who win their orphanage back from the mob in a soccer tournament. It was a soccer movie. It was a warm-hearted rom-com, and I landed the Roger, the sex-obsessed best friend of the main guy who's trying to pass off his sister as a boy in the orphanage. Oh, let me tell you, that's what we started with. Paramount Pictures, though, they said, wow, this is long before The Sandlot. It was like The Sandlot of soccer. But they said, why didn't you make this movie about basketball or hockey or anything but soccer? Because nobody played soccer in 1978. So, and I just worked with Sean Cunningham 3 or 4 weeks ago in Germany. And he explained all this to me and the German audience. So I've got a very fresh understanding of what happened. They turned to Sean and said, well, you did a very successful movie with Wes Craven. It's called Last House on the Left. Why don't you give us another horror offering? Okay. And thus, Friday the 13th was born. But it even gets more complicated because the initial version that he turned in of Friday the 13th did not have the final scene where little Jason comes out of the water. So the only iteration of Jason Voorhees at that point was a drowning child. I went home in the summer of 1979 thinking, wow, this sucks. I play a drowning child in this movie, you know? And then, so we did, at that point, we certainly had no idea. And then everyone was lukewarm about this film until they put the ending on it. And that changed everything. That final sequence, as Sean just told me, when Paramount's executives saw it, they went wild. They invited all of their secretaries and their families to do a test screening the next day. And the result was that when I jumped out of the water, half the audience started crying and screaming and yelling at them, why did you make us watch that? And they knew they had a hit. They said, we got it. So they did an unprecedented thing. They released Friday the 13th in 800 theaters across the country on the one day. This had never been done before. Usually they would release it into like 40 or 50 theaters. In this case, 800 theaters, never done before. So I do think that speaks volumes for the immense success of Friday the 13th. But to speak to your question, initially, I wasn't going to go up to my friends really and talk about it because horror movies back then were kind of taboo. It was kind of frowned upon initially. And so then you got our famous brother Sackhead in part 2. Okay, with the canvas sack on his head. That wasn't going anywhere. So it was, I mean, I know there's a lot of people who love part 2, okay? But it wasn't until the hockey mask, Richard Brooker put on the hockey mask in part 3 that we really have, if you will, a continuation of the kind of scare factor that we laid out there in the first Friday the 13th. So even then, it was just starting. The wheels were turning. But yeah, part 3 was big. Part 4 with Ted White also big. So I would say by that point in time, we started to realize this was going to be a classic. Well, not, a new slasher was on the block, if you will, at that point.
So what's interesting about part 1 to me is when you compare part 1 to 2 and the others, the timelines are close, right? So Jason is a child still in part 1 when he jumps out of the water.
Yes.
But if you look at a lot of the scenes in the movie, I've always had this theory that Jason is secretly like helping Mrs. Voorhees. You just don't see him. Was that ever discussed? Did Sean ever talk about that, or was that not really even
Are
on
you
the
saying
table?
the idea that that little? You saying the idea that little Jason was actually part of the action himself?
Exactly, right. Maybe that Jason was helping, you just didn't see him. Was that ever discussed or no?
Well, I like that idea. No, in fact, much to the contrary, when I arrived at the set, well, initially when Sean called me up, he said, "We need you to come back to the set," because it wrapped in August of 1979, right? And then they called me back in October because Paramount Pictures said, "What you sent us here before that test screening," they said, "You've got a picture here with an old lady that gets her head chopped off and a little boy that drowns. We need a new ending." Okay. So after submitting that ending, okay, and um um see, when I got to the set, when Sean called me, I said to him, "Okay, you need me to come back to the set, but my character's dead. What am I going to do? Just lie there on the beach?" You know? And he goes, yeah, no, it's not. He actually said to me, "No, you get your revenge." And so I said, wow, I get my revenge. Well, this is great, you know? And the whole idea, we worked on the new makeup. He's all covered in mud and disfigured. And in my mind, it was like Swamp Thing or Creature from the Black Lagoon. He survived underwater somehow, or he was reanimated by his mother's blood when her head was chopped off. Okay, so that made perfect sense to me. But when I got to the set, I was handed a script. It said Alice's dream. Alice's dream. So in other words, the little boy drowned, right? 11 years prior to when all the killings are going on, my friend. So according to those writers, there's no way that little boy who was dead at the bottom of the lake could have been doing that. Now, suspension of disbelief, et cetera, et cetera. It's a horror movie. Even when Sean said to me, it's a dream sequence, right? I got very upset. I said, "You said I get my revenge." And he said, "Well, people can't live for 11 years underwater, Ari. That's impossible." And in my mind, hey, it's a horror movie. Anything's possible. Now, I hasten to point out that the fans accepted my interpretation, as I hope you all do, that Jason is real. It's not a dream. It's not like Freddy. It's a real character. And that, yes, there was some perhaps paranormal type element or some sort of, you could call him a vengeance ghost, perhaps, but he's real. He's an actual real entity. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely.
So I had a question for you. You do a lot of conventions, going and meeting fans and stuff like that.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for the key star, man.
Yeah, great picture, by the way. Also, the cover of one of the albums has you as Jason with the keytar over the canoe, which it was a great picture.
That's so damn good. I love that artwork.
Yeah, gorgeous artwork.
The artist Scott Jackson, yeah, with Adrian in the boat. I love it. Yeah.
So like I was saying, you go to a lot of conventions, you meet a lot of fans, a lot of people. What is the most fun, bizarre, or weirdest interaction you've ever had with a fan at a convention?
Oh my gosh. The most fun, bizarre, or weird. Wow. I mean, that I can mention? Oh my God. I can't even begin to tell you how much fun I've had with all of these amazing, wonderful, wonderful people. Because it's all about the fans with Friday the 13th. But gosh, I guess one interaction was when, now many times I've been asked to write my autograph, and then someone has it tattooed on them. You know what I'm saying? And that's occurred many, many times. But there was one instance where I was actually handed the tattoo needle to actually tattoo my name into a fan's back.
Wow.
Now being a tattoo artist, and that now I have a bunch of tattoos now, okay, and I love tattoos. This by Richie Vaughn from Pittsburgh, but at that point I didn't know anything about, and I had a couple drinks. I literally, but they said, no, we want you to do this. We want you to do this. So I took the needle. I thought, okay, I'll just write, Ari J1 or something, and I put the needle down. Now I didn't know the thing that it makes the paint runs everywhere, but then it's just that little point is just where the tattoo is. Okay, so I pressed down and I saw the paint run all over, I said, oh my God, I've ruined your back for life. And they said, no, wait. And they brushed it away, and it was just this little dot. And I said, oh my God, so how do you do art like this? You're doing all this magnificent artwork, and I can't still understand how they do it. But yeah, so yeah, I managed to write Ari, and I think put Jason 1 or J1, just something little. So yeah, that's one. Another time when I had to judge a tattoo contest. You can imagine where this is going, guys. So one of the contestants, they had tattoos all over their body. Okay, so in certain cases, I would have to judge a tattoo that was on someone's genitalia. So that's a pretty wild.
Kellen, you've known him that long?
As the head has the hockey mask on it, you're not supposed to tell everybody, Jay. That's the worst, Jason.
Oh my
Jimmy.
God. Oh, I don't want to think about that.
Well, he's definitely not as tall when he comes out of the water.
Well, clearly,
I was in the pool. I was in the pool.
Oh my God. But that's just, so there you go. Those are some of the crazier experiences that I've had with the wonderful fans. I mean, I've had so many wonderful experiences, like people bringing all kinds of pets to meet me. I love it when people bring their pets. They bring a pet snake or spiders, or they bring their dog all dressed up like Jason, or they bring their dog dressed up like Mama Voorhees. I love it. It's so much fun. I have to admit, the experience of meeting people and seeing how much the mythology of Jason Voorhees has spread and in so many ways, especially when I meet these kids, little kids who are just so into Jason. There's a phenomenon. There's like 5 to 10-year-olds who, I'm sure you've met these kids. They love Jason. And I'm saying to them, have you ever seen Friday the 13th? And no, I saw it on YouTube. I saw it on TikTok. I saw a video. And then I say, I'm just the boy in the lake, Jason. So how can you, and they say, that's my favorite Jason, the little boy. I don't know. I love it. I love that. And then, of course, you got to talk about the kids that are on the spectrum and the people on the spectrum, because they have an affinity for Jason. And, you know, now those people I love so much, and they know I love them, because those people I find to be very, very emotionally present individuals. And so they'll show up and they can always tell how I'm feeling at the convention. You know, if I want to rock out or if I need a little hug or something, then they come up and they're always there for me, you know. So it's, I think that if anybody had ever experienced what I experienced from the other end of the table, you know, you'd never stay home, because, you know, you gotta be out there, which is, you know, that's the difficult part. Right now, I'm in the van after leaving, you know, I guess we were home for a couple days, 2 days or something. And now we're out for a month because it's October. And of course, it's Friday the 13th. So it's Friday the 13th every day.
That's right. So, Tom Savini has famously mentioned that on the set that you were his weed dealer. So I'm just curious, do you have any good Tom Savini stories from the set?
Oh, gosh. Well, Tom Savini, Tom Savini's amazing, wonderful, intense, creative force. Just to be around him as a kid was something else. He always teases that I was the supplier or I was selling weed. No, I was just cool enough to bring my own weed to the set, okay, and some hash. And yes, but of course they weren't smoking weed. They were all snorting coke on the set. What are you talking about? Please, they were snorting coke. They would be working on me, and they'd say, "Oh, we have to go to the kitchen. We have to go to the kitchen." And they would go to the kitchen, and they would come back and they would start singing, Ari Lehman, like Ari Krishna, Ari Lehman, dancing around and doing my makeup. And I was like, I know what's going on here, because I saw my dad and his friends take cocaine too. But the point being that I brought some weed. Sure, I did. You know, I wanted to be cool. But no, I'm a enormous smoker of marijuana. There's a famous picture where a Japanese photographer was there, and they told me, Ari, don't let this photographer see you. Go in the woods, because I had the mask on. They were working on it. They didn't want to, and so I was rolling a joint in the woods, right? And I heard a sound, and I just leaned out I just peeked out like this from behind the tree. So there's a famous picture. It's in Tom Savini's book too, and I'm like going like this. But what you can't see behind the tree is that I'm rolling a joint. And they put it in the Japanese press. I love it. But anyway, yeah, I mean, Tom Savini, when I met him, he would always emphasize the works of the great artists. He had busts of Bela Lugosi and Vincent Price and Christopher Lee and all the greats, and I'm leaving one out, which I should. Lon Chaney.
Yeah.
Yes, Lon Chaney, and yes, all the greats, you know. And working with Tom, I saw how they would. It's the vision of an artist that they're paid for, not their labor. And this visionary artist could take anything. They just made up all those ideas for Friday the 13th. They like the scene with, you know, when Annie gets her throat cut at the beginning. Man, they just, you know, and everything they were doing was original, and they were again, they didn't have a full budget and they didn't have much time, so they were working much like independent filmmakers work today. But it was now, but mind you, they had just absolute ingenuity. So they had, you know, I worked for about 3 or 4 months initially with Tom to create the mask. So they cast my head, and then they built the mask, and they cast that, and then they have to, fit the mask. Then you've got a glass eye, and you've got false teeth, okay? And then it's all about learning the motion, learning the mannerisms, learning. One thing they did, which I think was a lasting impression, which is a good anecdote. On the morning when we had finally completed the first version, it was very early in the morning because we had to start shooting about 7:30. So it was like 5 in the morning, just sunrise, very quiet there at Camp Novi Bosco. And they had been working on me in a barber chair. So what they did was they said, look, Ari, we want you to close your eyes and count to 10. And when you're done, we're going to be out of the room. We're going to leave you alone in this room. And open your eyes. And so I said, okay, and I closed my eyes, and they turned the barber chair around to face this giant mirror. And then I opened my eyes. Oh, I thought, who is that? I turned around. I thought there was somebody else in the room with me. And then I comprehended that it was me.
So could you only see through one eye in that mask?
Yes, that's correct. And I have a good story about that too. But at this point, I think, I don't know if we had the glass eye in at that moment, but I just immediately became sympathetic for Jason. I thought, oh my God, what monster could have done this? Exactly. Oh my God, how terrible. And then I got angry. I was angry. How could they let this little boy drown? This is, they were so right to just leave me in there to allow me to absorb the emotion and then build the motivation as a character. It's very important, especially when, yes, like you're saying, well, the first thing I did, they handed me the script. So I looked at the script and I'm going through the script and I said, wait, there's no lines. So then Sean said, yes, you're the monster. So I said, oh, I'll put it in my eyes. I'll put it all in my eyes, my feelings. And then Tom Savini said, well, Ari, you'll only have one eye. So I hasten to point out that there has to be a world's record. Okay, if you were to take the number of seconds that I was on screen, very brief number of seconds, and divide them by the number of people that I have scared in these 40 gazillion years, and then, somehow add for it's only one eye, there's got to be, it's like the most people scared in the shortest screen time with one eye.
World record for sure. So before we close up shop, I have one last question that's not Friday the 13th related. I've always been curious. I love The Barn and The Barn 2. Is that the most fun you've had in a movie because you're essentially playing yourself?
Yes, I love The Barn too. I love The Barn. Working with Justin M. Seaman. He's awesome. He's a great director. Everybody should know that he has built his own soundstage in West Virginia with Hollywood production, level, just amazing. But also, yeah, absolutely fun to shoot a nail gun and kill zombies with my guitar. I mean, come on. Yes. I'm basically, I am Dr. Rock. And there's gonna be a Barn 3.
Nice.
So, and who knows what really happened to Dr. Rock? You didn't see it. You saw the zombies attack him, but you didn't see, a cadaver. So
right.
Who knows?
Awesome.
Anything
I look forward
can
to
happen.
that.
Maybe Dr. Rock comes back as a zombie. But more than anything, people have to check out The Barn 2. It's got Doug Bradley, Linnea Quigley, who I'm going to be working with, coming up soon. Lloyd Kaufman is in it. Joe Bob Briggs is in it. Darcy is in it. All those people are in it. It's a fantastic film. Go and check it out. It's actually on Screenbox right behind Terrifier 2, which is a super amazing movie, but much heavier. You know, The Barn 2 is a lot of fun.
Heavier,
you know?
heavier is an understatement, I would say. Compared.
Well,
but
I love those guys. They did what they did. But you know, if I may say so, there's better boobs in The Barn 2.
Yeah. They're both great. Check them out. They're 100% 80s vibes, practical effects. They're both a lot of fun. All right, so
in
that's
fact,
going to be
they did a video game. They did a you know, 9 whatever that one of those video games. It's really cool.
Yeah, I saw that. All right, so that's going to be a wrap on this episode. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, to wherever you listen to this podcast. I made an Amazon playlist featuring artists and scores from the movies. You can check that out on Amazon Music. Just search the Horror Sanctum podcast playlist. It's going to have Ari and First Jason on it coming up. And come back next week when we talk about The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Ari, thank you again for taking some time with us. It was fantastic. You want to take a second and tell everybody where they can find your music, where they can catch you on tour, and all that fun stuff.
Oh, yeah. We are on tour everywhere you look. We're going to be in amazing, amazing places. Just check us out on our social media. That's First Jason Official on Facebook, First Jason 13 on Instagram, and check out our new video called Look What You Did on YouTube. And remember, Jason never dies.
Go check him out. Buy shit. I have your signature more than anybody else in my house. So it's always a pleasure. Go see them live. They're fantastic. And you're going to be in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Oh, yeah. We're in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. That's October 20th, I believe. October 22nd, Murfreesboro, Tennessee at Seasons. The night before that is at the Embassy Theater in Fort Wayne, Indiana. That's Saturday, October 21st, Embassy Theater, Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Awesome. So for all you local guys, go catch them in Murfreesboro. You will not regret it. Ari, tell the rest of the boys I said hello.
I will.
And until next time.
Say hi. Hey, how are you? Can you see him?
Hey, that's too dark. All right. So I'm Jay with Ari, John, Kellen, TJ, and the rest of First Jason. And until next time,
keep it spooky.